Welcome, everybody, to the 7th episode of Unpacking Software from Chocolatey Software. Today, we'll be chatting about and giving our expert opinion on the latest software news focusing on packaging, software deployment, and lifecycle management. Every third Thursday of the month at 4 p.m. UTC, we'll be live streaming, but we also make this episode available very soon afterwards as a podcast, which you can download and listen to in your favourite podcast manager. We have another live stream on the first Thursday of each month called Product Spotlight, where we spotlight Chocolatey products, discuss releases, highlight features, and walk through tutorials and demos. And to ensure you get notified of all the awesome Chocolatey content that we create, ensure you join our community hub on Discord, subscribe to us on YouTube, and click the notification bell. Really, really important. Or you can follow us on Twitter or X, Mastodon, LinkedIn, Facebook, Blue Sky, and Twitch. You can find all of the links to all of those on our homepage, chocolatey.org. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll find the links on the bottom of the website, or you can find it in the description of wherever you found this content. We want to make sure that we hear from you about all the fantastic content that we are producing. So we have a link for you. It's on screen. And if you could take 10 seconds just to complete that, you'll be able to give us the feedback and let us know what content that you want to see and what you think of the content that we are producing. If you can't see the screen and you're on the podcast, obviously you'll be able to find it in the description, but also it's at ch0.co/stream survey, all one word. My name is Paul Broadwith and I'm the Technical Engineering Manager here at Chocolatey Software, and today I'm joined by two guests. I'm joined by our Principal Software Engineer, Gary Ewan Park, and our Customer Solutions Manager, Stephen Valdinger. Now, today we've got quite a bit of news to get through, but we're not going to talk too much about the CrowdStrike issue because it happened just after our last stream, and everything has been said about it that really needs to be said. We will be touching on it though, and we're picking up a couple of different things. We won't digging into it in a huge amount of depth because you're probably sick to death of hearing it by now. But I want to start with some open source news, and Google brings an AI agent platform, Project Oscar, to open source and makes it open source as well. So it's an open source contributor agent architecture, and it's a project aiming to improve open source software development by creating automated help or agents, as it calls them, for open source maintenance. Gary, long time open source person. What do you think of this? Is this something you would make use of? Is this something you think is actually helpful to open source maintainers?
So, I guess I'm personally, I'm a bit torn. I'm a bit torn because I am I'm on the side of I want a human response to things. So if I'm a contributor to a project and I get a bot talking back to me, I'm like, why is someone not talking to me? Why am I getting a bot? The other side of it is I can understand though that sometimes as open source maintainers we are flooded with things. Sometimes we don't have time to work on things. So we've recently just instigated some things like Stalebot on some of our repositories. This is kind of spearheaded by the work that you're doing, Paul, but it just means that we don't have that psychic weight that's sitting with us saying we need to do something with these issues. It's a bot that's doing it instead. So I get that part of it. So speaking specifically about Oscar, I like where it's going though. It is trying to learn your project based on your documentation, your issues, your all the information about your project, so it can give the best helps available. I like the fact that it's being tried in Anger on some of the Go repositories. I like that idea. My main concern about this project specifically, if I had to be honest, it's Google. And is it not? Or is it just that they're hosted on it? Because my concern
No,
there
it's from
is
Google.
Google have got like there's a website for it. There's like a Google graveyard of things that they've put to death because it hasn't gone anywhere. So I would be concerned about it from that point of view. But no, I do like the idea of a bot being there to kind of be first line support, if you like, for contributing to a project. I like the concept of it. I would need to see it in action before I could make it too much. Uh, say too much about it, but no, I like the idea of it. I'm genuinely resistant or hesitant to all these AI large language models, but they're becoming more front and center now. So I might just have to get over it.
Get with the times and
Exactly.
stop showing your age, Gary.
Exactly.
Get on with
Exactly.
the kids and
I mean,
take it
some of
with
the
you.
developers on our team know that I'm an old fuddy duddy when it comes to certain coding standards and things. I just need to get over that too. Um, but yeah, I'm getting old. Get off my lawn and all that. So
One of the things that it concerns me a little bit about it is I was reading something recently actually about Google captures or the reCAPTCHA that you go and click and
mm,
and I don't know whether this is true or not. I kind of read the headline, read a little bit of the article, didn't dig into it anymore. But they were saying that's actually been used to train AI as well. So even the reCAPTCHAs that you're clicking on is training some sort of LLM somewhere or
mm,
AI system somewhere. And so that what I'm thinking here is that again they're just going to be training their LLMs on your open source project and your interaction or its interaction with your
mm,
potential contributors. Um, I appreciate they've spent money on this, but as an open source project or they've made it open source, it just feels like we can never have nice things. Somebody somewhere's obviously got to have to monetize it in some way. And I'm not saying that's what's happening here. It just feels like it might be a little bit. But it might be useful for some projects. I think it would be. I think as it matures, it might become more useful.
I think
Uh,
so, and especially the way it's written in terms of first line support for here's a suggestion based on these connections that we've made. Your question sounds like it might be answered by this one. Or this page. I like that idea. We've seen things like that before, where you've had um, when you first start typing an issue or the name of an issue, it might say it might be related to this one. So we've kind of seen it in action already. So this is more just if you like, a more interactive live version of that. So yeah, I'd be interested to see where it goes. Um, whether we would pick something up like this, I don't know if we would. To be honest, not yet. We would need to
no,
get we would need to trust it before we could start putting that in action. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see where it goes.
it's goals. It's got a non-goal to automate away coding. It does nothing to do with code. It's not going to do any coding. It's
Mm,
going to answer questions of coding. It's all to do with that experience of working in the repository. Issues, pull
yeah,
requests. But it says one of the first. It's got four. The first one is reduce, maintain an effort to resolve issues. And note that resolved doesn't always mean fix, which is a good thing.
no,
Reduce, maintain an effort to resolve change lists or pull requests. And let me see, number three here, reduce, maintain an effort to resolve forum questions. So maybe in GitHub it would be discussions,
yeah,
and enable more people to become productive maintainers. So again, we've talked about in the past about kind of open source maintainer burnout and how there's more and more responsibility and pressure being heaped on top of open source maintainers. Maybe something like this. I'm not sure how much it's going to take away, but I think anything, if it takes away any of that pressure or that burden, must be a good thing. So
agreed.
a kind of mixed bag, a little bit there. But you've also got to be careful when you're using Google because, as you mentioned, that a graveyard of things that people have relied upon and that just disappear. Google Reader is still better. So for me,
For this sort of thing, I don't know if it has this function, but for me, this sort of function would be let me see the response first, and then I'll say yay or nay to it. Because at least then you've got that approval gate, if you like. So it's not an immediate response from the AI that's been trained. It's like, okay, that's kind of right, but this is how I would say it. So you can almost have that prompt based interaction with the model in order to get the response correct. And then as you build up trust in it, then you can start to release them automatically. But I almost kind of feel like I want an approval gate on some of this stuff, especially in this kind of context. But I
yeah,
don't know if it's there.
cool. Okay. So moving on from open source, we're going to move on to the rest of the actual stream/podcast is going to be about security and privacy news. There's an awful lot of it this month. Awful lot of it is CrowdStrike related. But as I said, we're not. We're going to look at other areas, and we're going to try and avoid some of that because, as I said, it's been talked to death. So we've probably got nothing specifically amazing to add to that. But Revolver Rabbit Gang registers 500,000 domains for malware campaigns. This is one I was looking at. I did a paper, paper, I suppose, a way back when I was in college about viruses. Now, bear in mind, this was 30 odd years ago. So viruses are a little different 30 odd years ago than they are today. But I've always been interested in how they kind of work. So this one really interested me because the gang themselves have registered 500,000 domains to use in their malware campaigns. And it starts talking a little bit, the article I was looking at, it starts talking about things called DGA and RDGA algorithms, which I had no idea what they meant. But DGAs are domain generation algorithms. So malware, apparently, nowadays they're wanting to connect to their command and control servers, they'll generate internally a list of servers that they will connect to. So the servers are not actually embedded in the malware itself. So you can't sort of deconstruct the malware and look at it and go, okay, we can take down these servers. No, they're actually generating it on the fly using an algorithm. And apparently the malware, let's say there's 100 domains that it actually is going to connect to, only one or two of those will have a command and control server at the end of it. So they'll get, 98 of those are not actually going to go anywhere. But what the kind of later malware has been doing is actually registering all of the domains. So the domains are all there, but not all of them are command and control servers, sorry. Some of them are decoys as well. So this particular malware gang has registered 700,000 domains in total, and 500,000 of those are in the .bond TLB, which I'd never heard of. I was thinking James Bond. I don't know why. Who's going to have a domain for James Bond? But it's actually a financial. A bond will be like bonds, finance. It's that kind of thing. I suppose you can use it for anything, but the kind of, when I was having a look at it, a lot of them were financial organizations. But yeah, I just found this fascinating. Apparently, they've spent almost $1 million registering the 700,000 domains so far. The .bond domains they were registering at about $2 each. And they've got obviously other ones as well. But yeah, they've spent about $1 million. It's a big investment if you're not getting a return. So, I mean, we know that this sort of malware and these campaigns are reaping money for the gangs that are involved. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. But to get it into numbers like, they've actually invested $1 million in just domains themselves before doing anything else. They're obviously expecting, probably based on experience, to reap a whole lot more than that. So I just found it really interesting about, how it's kind of evolved on from the domain generation to now registering all the domains and the kind of investment that these gangs are making. It's big business. And
So
it's just sad to see.
a couple of things on that. So James.bond doesn't seem to be registered because there's nothing on it. So if you want to go and get it, now is the time to go and
Really?
get
No.
James.bond. There's no website on it, and there's no I will sell you this domain
Let's
if you want
end
it
the live
website.
stream because someone in the live stream might get it. This was being recorded.
But the other thing that I was going to say is this not a red herring? If I were to rock up to GoDaddy, I wouldn't go to GoDaddy, but it's the first one that came to mind. If I was going to rock up to GoDaddy and say, "Can I have 500,000 domains?" Would that not be a little bit of a red herring to the
But
company?
they're probably not rocking up to GoDaddy. They're probably rocking up to really, really dodgy domain registrar.com.
Yeah.
That's
There must
probably
be
not available either, to be fair. Really dodgy domain registrar.com.
there must
Don't
I
buy them.
think there's rules and regulations around it. And now, granted, they just want your money. I get that, but at the same time, 500. Who needs 500,000 domains? No one.
Well, the Revolver Rabbit Gang do need 500,000 domains. So, and apparently you can. I was also reading that you can register these domains when they're being registered can be registered within seconds. Now, I don't know if anybody's ever bought anything online, but it doesn't take seconds. Particularly through a domain registrar, it takes far too long. So I don't know where they're getting these domain from, but I think the company behind who are actually selling them these domains needs to copyright or trademark its payment processing system, because I have never seen anything take seconds on the internet. So that's amazing. And maybe they should be marketing that. But I'm assuming it's really dodgy domainregistrar.com. Who's doing that? Or maybe it's multiple domains or multiple really dodgy domain registrars.com. I don't know. I'm not part of the Revolver Rabbit gang. So, or maybe I am.
But yeah,
And this is my last
Corey's right
stream.
as well. I probably should have said red flag, not red herring. I was off in a different route with that. Thanks, Corey. Red flag. Let's go with
It's
that.
a session with fish.
It's
Okay.
the place to be.
It is. It is near Aberdeen. Okay. So yeah, that's Revolver Rabbit Gang and RDGAs, and I found that quite interesting. So I thought I would bring that up. It doesn't sound like they've done anything with these domains as yet, but then there's so many of them. We don't know about it yet. But Signal is in the news twice this month. And they had an encryption key flaw. I still dispute this was a flaw. It's been there for so long, but apparently they fixed it after it was on Twitter. I used to call it X, the Twitter drama that was going on. Apparently, Signal does not, when you're using Signal on your desktop, does not encrypt the local database. It does encrypt the local database, but it keeps the key in plain sight, so anybody can actually see it. Now, they've said all along that that's intended behavior. We don't guarantee that your data on your local device is secure, or on the local desktop, is secure. So that's been something for a long time. But there's been an issue since 2018 about it. But because there was a big hoo-ha on Twitter, it's been fixed. Gary, you use Signal, don't you?
I use Signal on the mobile. I don't. I've never. I'm not going to say I never used it. I used it for a while, but then when I found that it didn't. It didn't. I was expecting it to be encrypted end to end on both the desktop and the mobile, and when I found that it didn't work in that way, I kind of stuck to using it just on my mobile. Just on my mobile. Um, I mean, I get what they're saying with this, but I can't remember installing the desktop app. But if I wasn't presented with a big red banner on installation that said your information isn't encrypted, then I can't say, I don't think you can say it's a known issue, because people just installing the app aren't running off to the issue from 2018 to find out that it's not encrypted. And if they knew about it, then I think there should have been a warning on installation that said there's no guarantee that your information is being encrypted, because everything that you hear about Signal is end-to-end encrypted and is secure. So for them to leave it since 2018, I think was a bit of a miss, to be honest. I don't like the Twitter drama aspect of this, in that if people kick up enough fuss on Twitter or on social media, some action gets taken. That shouldn't be how you get people to make changes to things. But that's just an aside. But yeah, from what I've read on this, it seems like a miss, if I'm honest.
It does
Especially
feel.
because there was an open source PR in to implement the actual workaround or the suggested way to go forward with it. Why they
Only
didn't pick
since
that up?
April, though. Only since April. But yeah,
Oh,
they hadn't
I
picked
read it
that
as
up.
being slightly earlier than that, but yeah, yeah,
I think what I'd read was the issue was raised in 2018, but because
gotcha.
there was something added to Electron for local storage encryption, um, in April, I don't know when that was added, but in April, someone put in a PR to
Gotcha.
make encrypt the local information, but that hadn't been touched. I kind of agree with you. It feels a little bit like they've dropped the ball. Signal, or Meredith, and I can't remember her surname, Whitaker, seems to kind of jump on a lot of. Like, she's criticised a lot of other organisations for not doing better, and totally justifiably. But I then feel if you're going to be doing that, it's like people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. You
Agreed.
need to make sure your house is in order, and not. And I'm not saying that she knew about this particular issue, but when asked, or when the Twitter drama blew up, the response from them was that there was no known exploits or no known issues or vulnerabilities in Signal. So maybe they didn't know about this particular thing at the time. But again, it just feels like a series of dropped dropped the ball several times. But the article that we'll post, and all the articles that we're discussing today, we'll post in a blog post after this, and it'll be available in the description where you find this after the live stream. Did kind of draw comparisons with Windows Recall and this, which I think was a bit of a stretch, to be fair.
Yes.
Because Microsoft delayed the release of Windows Recall to add additional protections, that's somehow a comparison to this, which I think Windows Recall had
Agreed.
much more
Agreed.
wide implications than Signal, but that's modern journalism for you. So there we go. But Signal is being blocked in Russia, citing violation of laws. Gary, you had a look at this?
I did. It's one. I'm not surprised. First of all, given history of things like this, it's unfortunate that the people situations like this, I always get concerned because some of the people who most need these apps for reasons, whether that's because they're trying to escape from things, whether they're trying to be like journalists on the ground and want to have secure apps for messaging and all these things, these are the people who are being prevented from using these things now. So I don't subscribe to the concept of we need to have, or we as government organizations need to have backdoors for all these things because we need to save the people from one person. I don't think my privacy should be invaded from that perspective. So Signal is one of those bastions of being able to be secure and be usable across all these things. So for them to be blocked, I think it's a real shame. I did find out there's an interesting option in Signal that I wasn't aware of, but there's a censorship circumvention. That's a bit of a tongue twister. It could have went horribly wrong there, but it didn't. So the censorship circumvention is a way to if you are having trouble getting connected to the Signal service, you can try using that, and it changes over and switches away from using easily identifiable SNI headers, whatever they are. I'm speaking like an ops person now, so I'll stop. I don't know what that is, but the default is for it to use those things. So I can only assume that that's what Russian networks are latching on to prevent access to the service. So by switching away from using those, you've got a better chance of getting connected. But yeah, it's a shame. It really is. It's great that the Signal app has those options to try and allow people to get around these things. And if you aren't already, Signal does have a place that you can donate to keep it going and keeping the service alive. So if you're not doing that already, it's in the app. It prompts you every so often if you're not subscribed to it. So I would highly I can't force you to do it, but I would suggest
Recommend?
that you
Is that
should.
the word you're looking for?
I would suggest that you could absolutely go and do that to help out the Signal developers. So there you go. Yeah, it's a shame.
Do you use Signal, Stevie?
I do. Yeah.
Did you take Gary's advice there and highly recommend that you donate?
I haven't donated to Signal, but I actually use Signal when we travel for work, and there's a group of us. Like, I don't actively use it very, very often. So if I used it more, I probably would. But I use it once in a blue moon, every couple of months, maybe twice, 3 times a year. It's not very often.
Okay.
It's definitely not my default app. I mean,
Yeah.
the default app is where all your friends and family are, and for me, that's WhatsApp. So that's where the majority of our conversations go. But Signal is kind of the probably second in the pecking order in terms of what I use it for.
Cool. Okay, we're going to move on to Meta.
I thought that was Telegram, Corey. I thought that was Telegram we chatted there. But,
yes, we're going to move on to Meta. Apparently, they've been hauled over the coals, I believe, in Texas for unauthorized facial recognition image capture. So they were capturing images of people's, or they were using people's faces in images to. I think they were they not training AI on that as well. But anyway, they're going to be paying $1.4 billion over 5 years, and I think it is in Texas, Stevie, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Texas. Yep.
Texas.
Yeah.
You had to look at
That's
this,
a
didn't you?
that's a law that I actually didn't know existed, but actually found out about yesterday, completely unrelated. I was looking for new eyeglasses on lenscrafters.com, and they have a like VR try-on thing that uses your webcam so you can see what the glasses look like. And before you can actually use it, there's this big long banner that's like, hey, do you live in this state? And it wasn't Texas, it was Indiana or Illinois. It was one of the ones that would start with an I. But one of those states, basically, you can't do it in that state. Because if you check yes, they're like, I'm not sorry, your state won't let us collect the data that we need. So too bad, so sad. I'm surprised Texas isn't on that list as well. Now after hearing about this thing, but yeah, this is one of the many reasons that I don't use social media like Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or I don't I don't have time. B, I don't care. And C, don't use my stuff. Like that it ticks me off. It really, really does. Now the tech might be cool. What they were using it for was like here's a picture, and we know that this is Gary, and this is Sarah, and this is Michael. Do you want to tag them in the picture? That's what the biometric stuff was originally used for. Um, but yeah, that they've been secretly doing it for a long time and like claiming that there are settings to control that and turn it off and stuff, but they were capturing the biometric data since I think 2011, but didn't surface controls
Mm.
until 2018 or 2019 to be able to turn it off or on or whatever. So potentially you've got how many years of that stuff going on, and what wasn't clear in the article and something that's kind of a little bit concerning, like I've got kids. Were they grabbing their faces too? Like not to recommend, hey, this is so and so or whatever, but it was a face in a picture.
Hmm.
I've got maybe I've got a kid that's she's or he or she is 10, but they look much older than their age. So the facial recognition is like, oh, that's an adult. Snap, grabs their face. Whatever. Like,
Mm.
there's a bunch of concerns there that just weirds me out and makes me really, really glad that I don't use social media anymore because it just gives me the heebie-jeebies, and I do not like it.
I think some of these concerns as well, until I'd read more and more, not this particular issue, but a lot more about what has happened at Meta over the years, you would think that, oh, well, society has advanced, technology has advanced. So some of these thoughts that we're having today about, privacy invasion and having, the kids aspect, maybe didn't occur to them back in 2011. After reading some of the stuff that I have done about Meta in particular, I don't believe that those questions never came up in 2011. I believe that what happened was they did come up, they didn't care, and they moved on anyway. And why on earth would you want to turn it off, Stevie? That's the other thing. So why would you care about, the controls are not there for like 6, 7 years? Because everybody would want it. It's an amazing feature. You can tag all your
Mm-hmm.
friends. That's great. Until you find out what's happening behind the scenes. And again, I'm using this phrase again. This is why we can't have nice things.
Yeah.
Because companies offer you these great features. Oh, you can tag all your friends and all your that sounds amazing. Wait a minute. What are you getting out of this? Why are you giving this
Mm.
amazing feature? What are you so you can also know. It's the same as the recapture stuff that I mentioned. That's great. You can stop bots. Yeah, but you're also training our AI, which is great. Okay, you've got to get something out. It's
There's
there's
there's no
just
such thing as a free feature.
no. There's got somebody's got to monetize it some way.
Yeah, yeah, it
And we're
costs
all
something.
yeah. And it's costing people their privacy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the same. I don't use Facebook. I've got a Facebook account. I don't use it. It's mainly for the kids, etc. To keep touch. I don't have Instagram. I don't have anything like that. Again, it's about that whole everything you do is feeding the machine. It's
Yeah.
and that machine is ultimately making money out of what you're doing. It just feels wrong. It feels a little bit dirty. I feel like I need a shower afterwards. It's not great. But yeah, so they've been fined 1.4 billion over 5 years. They're going to be paying that off. So at least it's something. But 1.4 billion to Meta is literally
I
what
was gonna
Mark
say it's
Zuckerberg
nothing.
would find down the sofa after a
Yeah.
weekend.
Yeah.
So yeah, and they're paying over 5 years. They must have been laughing all the way out of court for that one. But anyway, but moving on to another fantastic social network, Twitter/X. They've been accused of unlawfully using personal data of 60 million users to train its AI. Gary, you're a heavy X user, are you not? Twitter user.
It's fair to say that once upon a time that would have been the case, but I mean, I've not maybe to the same extent as Stevie, but I have sort of stepped back a lot from a lot of the social media stuff. I have accounts everywhere because I wanted to ensure that I got my handle on all the places, but I don't necessarily use them. Um, if nothing else from this article, I found out about a hidden setting in Twitter that's enabled by default, which is the allow. Where did it go? The wording on it is allow your posts as well as your interactions, inputs, and results with Grok uh, to be used for training and fine tuning their models. And that was ticked on by default for me. So I've been in and switched that off now. But yeah, that this whole thing. So Grok is X's large language model chatbot, which is available to premium and premium plus subscriptions, of which I have neither, because I refuse to give money to Twitter. I also call it Twitter, not X. But yeah, that was enabled by default, which I think that's a bit rude, to be honest. That should have been an opt-in as opposed to an opt-out. So why that decision was made, I can only imagine. Um, but yeah, it's one of these situations that I know what Stevie's saying in terms of the meta side of things, but part of me has resigned myself to, as you say, if they're using, you can't get away from them using your data now. So it's kind of it's written into the contract now that they will be using your data in some way, shape, or form. And if you want to use this service, it's just a cost of entry. So part of me has become a bit jaded to this sort of announcements of such and such doing such a thing and such doing it. I'm like, okay, fine. It's just what we need to do. I'm not saying that's right, but this sort of thing doesn't surprise me anymore. But it also doesn't prevent me from going on and sending another tweet every so often. So I don't know. I don't know what to say about it. It's rude. I would wish people wouldn't do things like this, but hopefully there'll be some sort of settlement coming out of it to make them think about not doing it again.
I think there was something that Twitter was doing as well. I think turning it off was not available in the mobile app. It was only
Well,
available in the
possibly.
browser or something. So I read something somewhere, and it might not have been this. It might have been something else, but it was only available in one platform, and whether that was a mobile app or the website or vice, I can't remember, but that seems really stupid as well. Like, if there's an account setting that's configurable, allow me to configure that setting anywhere I can use your platform.
Yeah,
Yeah,
agreed.
I completely agree. Again, being we've mentioned the word jaded, that makes me think that maybe that was intentional.
Perhaps, yeah, yeah.
Um,
I
maybe,
think we're fast approaching, the point in society where it's just the norm. Like,
Yeah,
there's not going to be any red flags being raised or any fights against it or anything, because we've got our kids, they're growing up, they're getting older, we're getting older, we're going to go away eventually. These kids are growing up with all this stuff around them, and to them it's just normal, right? This is just their normal. Where to us, we grew up with sticks and dirt and playing outside and all this stuff, and then the computery stuff came later. So we had both sides of it. Eventually, it's not going to be the case anymore. So I think we're fast approaching the new normal, and it's a little bit scary to me. To
Well,
be honest.
I don't know how true this was, but I read something. I forget what it was now, but the next generation of kids are growing up in such a way that when a photo gets taken or when a family photo gets taken, they all put their hands on their nose. Because then at that point, they're reducing the spread of their information, their biometrics, onto the internet. So you'll see them. The article showed various examples of kids. Now, it might just have been happenstance that they were trying to have a sneeze at the
Yeah.
time the photo was taken, but what they were trying to say was that kids are growing up in such a way that they're covering their faces whenever the opportunity comes, that they're to reduce their surface area of their information getting out there. So, as you say, Stevie, it's not something we would have even thought about. But the next
Nope.
generation of kids might grow up doing this because of not wanting their information to get out there. So, um, one thing I was going to say about this was, um, if you went looking for this setting to turn it off in the Twitter settings page, it's not particularly easy to find unless you had the direct link. So from the article gave you the direct link, but it's not immediately obvious that there's a that Grok is this AI LLM that is collecting your data. It's not until you click through that it kind of gives you information about what it's doing and why. Um, so that is also a little bit cheeky. And then I also thought, based on initial reading of the article, it was like, I thought that you were only able to switch it off if you had a premium or premium plus subscription. So I was wondering whether that was a route that they were going as well, in terms of, we're doing all this stuff, and if you don't like it, give us money and we'll let you turn it off, which also would be quite cheeky. But no, they're not doing that yet. So we'll wait and see.
I believe that's, I don't know if the word is illegal or at least against the spirit, I think, of the GDPR. I think Meta
Correct.
tried that,
Correct.
where they were saying, hey, we won't put ads in your stream if you give us cash. And the EU said, no, you can't do that. That's not how these things work. But coming back to the EU, actually, the group that found out about this happening was None of Your Business, which is NOYB. And they claim X began unlawfully using the personal data to train its AI technologies without consent, and they filed GDPR complaints in 9 EU countries.
Yeah.
So yeah, and as you mentioned, Gary, the chatbot itself, Grok, is available to premium or premium plus subscription. So if you've got that blue tick, oh no, that's blue tick doesn't. Everybody's got a blue tick now. So yeah, well done, Ellen, on that one. So the next one we're going to speak about is Microsoft. So Microsoft's global sprawl under fire from regulators after the Windows outage. So this is a little tiny bit about CrowdStrike, but what actually happened was all these Windows machines fell over because of CrowdStrike, and then people went, "Wait a minute, we're all reliant on these. This might be a problem." I don't know why this just came up when they all fell over and why it didn't come up before that, but we should be grateful that it came up at all.
Yeah.
Steve, you've had a look into this one. What is going on?
I did. So people are complaining that Windows is everywhere, and they are so big, right? That Microsoft is such a big company that if Microsoft were to all of a sudden magically disappear from the face of the earth tomorrow, we would be royally screwed, right? Because the world runs on Microsoft technologies, which is true, but I don't necessarily agree with the whole monopoly aspect that they're claiming, because most of the websites on the internet do not run on IIS. They run on Apache or Nginx or something like that. Like, Linux in the enterprise is extremely prevalent as well. It just so happens that a lot of the systems that run things like Active Directory and file services, etc., all of that stuff is still a really, really large footprint. And all of these big ERP systems that run on Windows, payment processors, et cetera, like, it's so intertwined that I don't think you're ever going to fix the problem by having Windows have a smaller footprint and something like a bunch of Linux distros all of a sudden come into popularity and people switch to them, and now we've got all three or four or five different operating systems. We already have way more than five operating systems that people can choose from, right? So it's a matter of where can I make money, and people who write software say Microsoft's huge. Microsoft runs everywhere. I'm going to write my application for Windows because it's going to have the most support. I can make the most money there. So they do. If we have more people that say, hey, I'm going to write this application and I'm going to write it in such a way that it can run anywhere, it can run on Windows, it can run on a Mac, it can run on Linux, we give these enterprises choice, maybe they'll reduce their Windows footprint. So I don't think the article was very fair in that regard either. Because, yeah, Microsoft is a big, huge, scary monster of a company because it is so big. But it's not a problem of choice. We do have choices. And we could, as software developers, choose to write software for any platform. We typically just choose the one that's most popular. And today, that's Windows.
But I think part of what the article was saying as well was that, and it might have been it actually might have been the next thing we're going to talk about. So tell me I'm wrong. But it mentioned that because Microsoft is so prevalent, it's becoming the case that they're trying to, or they are locking in customers using it to their services. So it becomes much more, not impossible, but much more difficult to move and much more expensive to move away from that. I think it's really referring to the cloud, Azure, it's referred to
Yeah.
rather than their operating system. But because of the links that they've got to everything now, between the cloud, you've got hybrid models. You've got the cloud only model. You've got Windows now being able to be an integral part. I see Windows really as a client for their services, for Microsoft services. It's becoming much more difficult to move away, and that's part of that global sprawl. That once you're in there, it becomes more difficult to get out again, particularly if you're a large enterprise who's spent millions of dollars, maybe in licenses and migration services and all these different things, to then suddenly go, yeah, we're going to move to another cloud provider.
I think that was part of this article as well. What was the cloud component of it? I think you're right.
But that actually takes us nicely on, and it was definitely part of this next one, where Microsoft points the finger at the EU. I genuinely love the headline for this. Microsoft points finger at EU for not being able to lock down Windows. It is the EU for this. Again, this is a little bit the CrowdStrike thing about more of the fallout, and it's basically the EU's fault that Microsoft couldn't lock down the kernel so much and stop third-party vendors being able to use those sort of kernel level drivers and having access to it. So EU bad, apparently. Stevie, again, you had to dig into this, and I have an opinion on this. But what came out of the article for you?
So one, Mac OS has locked out their kernel for years now. So it's not the EU's fault that Windows can't. They just won't, right? So yeah, I'm really, really torn on this one because I understand where Microsoft is coming from and why they want to do what they're doing. Um, so it's really, really difficult from a security perspective. It makes perfect sense, right? Hey, you're not allowed to do stuff in the kernel. Don't let anybody do stuff in the kernel. Making exceptions for security products and things like that, I kind of get it. I really do, but I don't necessarily agree with it either because it does cause problems, right? It's just yet another attack vector. So I'm really torn. Like I don't know what my opinion should really is on this because I don't know which way I should go with it.
From the article, the Microsoft had said that they'd made an agreement with the EU in 2009 that they would allow third-party access to the kernel, so that their products, I think it was to be competitive, because if they lock down the kernel, then they're being anti-competitive. And that was the reason why they said, well, we had the agreement with the EU, and therefore we can't lock down the kernel. But I think that's really been disingenuous to the whole point of this. Why did they have an agreement with the EU? Well, they probably had the agreement with the EU because they were being anti-competitive. So if we want to spin it on its head, Microsoft cannot lock down Windows because Microsoft cannot control themselves to be anti-competitive. That's the problem here. If they were not being anti-competitive in the first place, the EU wouldn't have got involved. They wouldn't have had to have that agreement. The kernel had been locked down and CrowdStrike wouldn't have happened. Not saying that it's Microsoft's fault CrowdStrike happened. I don't want people kind of extending that there, but you have to ask yourself why the agreement was made, not just that the agreement was made. It was made because Microsoft cannot stop being anti-competitive in these situations, and locking down the kernel would allow them to do that. They would have Windows Defender sitting in there, being able to work at the kernel level and being able to be that top tier security product, whereas things like CrowdStrike, maybe Symantec, maybe McAfee, and all the thousands of other AV tools that are out there wouldn't be able to do that. So they would be at a disadvantage. So it's Microsoft's own behavior that got them in this situation. And if they didn't behave in that way, I'm sure they didn't have to make that agreement, and we wouldn't have this problem. So that's probably not going to be very popular, but that's what I believe. It was their own fault in that. And that's something that the actual article doesn't kind of dig into either. But we've talked about it, or we've sort of brushed past it all the time. CrowdStrike, the whole issue with CrowdStrike, that happened. I think it was the day after, or a couple of days after, we had our live stream back in, when was it? That would have been, 18th would have been? Yes, 18th of July. So the 19th sounds
Yeah,
about right.
the 19th. The 19th was correct. The 19th was
Yeah.
correct because I was flying on the 20th. I remember, like, it happened on the 19th, and I was due to fly home from a conference on the 20th, and I was in Chicago airport, and the entirety of the United wing of like the terminal where all the United gates are, because that's what I flew this time. Every machine was blue screened. It was it was so surreal to walk through Chicago O'Hare Airport and see every boarding gate screen blue screened, and most of the digital signage machines around as well have a blue screen on it. Like it was just wild to walk through that airport and see all that. And I was very thankful that the systems that like actually scan your boarding pass to be able to get onto the plane, those are all probably AS400 COBOL green screen applications on the back end. So those were still fine. You could still scan your barcode and it went off to some mainframe somewhere. But yeah, if you wanted to know what your delay time was, sorry, that wasn't happening.
What was the airline that I don't know if they were being demonized or whether being
It was
praised, that
Delta.
Oh
it
yeah,
was, no, their technology was so old that
Del-
they got
oh,
yeah,
Southwest. That was
Southwest. That
Southwest.
was it. They used,
Southwest. Yeah, it's still running on Windows 3.1.
yeah. That was it.
Legitimately still
that's
running on
what it
Windows
was.
That was it.
3.1.
That's right.
Yeah.
And CrowdStrike apparently doesn't run on that. They don't have
Yeah,
a.
I
They
don't think
don't
it. I
have it.
don't think that
Yeah,
version of Windows is supported. Yeah, yeah,
don't think so. They just
yeah.
ship them out floppy disks of the updates.
Yep,
But
yep.
Yeah, so there was a lot. There was quite a lot of news about it. I mean, the couple of things that I'd noted down was about the cost that it was, or that was claimed to be, and it was $5 billion. Now, I'm assuming that it was an American article, so I'm assuming it was a cost to the US economy rather than the worldwide economy. Was estimated to be $5 billion. That just
It's
strikes me
low.
as, is it low? It strikes me as
So
a huge amount of money. I don't know whether
all of that,
it should be higher, but
that just seems low to me for the amount of systems that were impacted and the amount of stuff that went down. Like my wife had to get a new driver's license. Her license expired on the 18th of July, and she had to work, so she didn't make it to the BMV until the 19th to get her license renewed. Ohio's BMV was out the entire
mm,
weekend into the next week. That's a couple of days worth of vehicle registrations that were not lost but impacted. So maybe the figure is a true loss is much smaller than the amount of money that was shifted around a
mm.
little bit. That amount of money I think is much bigger. Sorry, as
I
I
mean that.
started to talk that through in my head, I was like, wait a second, no, we didn't lose the money. We just didn't get it on the day we expected.
Yeah, that's why we write things that. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, no, that does. Yeah,
Yeah.
but that number was quite early on as well. I mean, it wasn't at the beginning, obviously, but it was quite early on in this whole thing. So it could be that a lot of the fallout hadn't actually been come out at that point. And it was also an estimate of the cost.
Yeah.
But 5 billion is what I'd seen. Whether, as you said, Stephen, maybe it's low.
Yeah.
I haven't seen an updated figure, but regardless, it's a massive amount of money
It's a huge amount of
that's
money.
been lost. And to go back to the comments that we made about Microsoft, its global sprawl, etc., to have one organization put out a broken patch or a broken update, sorry, and for that broken update to cause $5 billion plus of impact to the economy in the US alone, because we're assuming that amount is the US alone. That's incredible to me that they had that amount of impact. What also I find incredible is that there's obviously a lot of organisations. I know this is partly CrowdStrike's fault because they don't allow a lot of minimizing the updates. Apparently, because it was a definitions update, regardless if you said don't give me updates or not, it went through. So there was no way of stopping this if your machines were online. But a lot of organisations are not putting any of these tiered update processes in place where you kind of go out in rings or you go in groups or departments. There's different ways that you do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that this was allowed to sort of permeate throughout the whole of the CrowdStrike's ecosystem, which is worldwide. It just seems credible to me that this can happen. It's such a huge scale.
So the one thing about this whole fiasco that I thought was a little bit of a saving grace for them. I don't know if you saw this because it wasn't linked in the articles that we discussed, but the CEO of CrowdStrike, Michael Santonas, went to DEF CON,
I
the
saw
hacker
that.
conference,
I watched the
and
video.
accepted the most epic fail award that they give away every year.
Yeah,
And
the Pony Award.
he was up on stage. He gave a speech. Whether he's actually going to do this part or not, I don't know. But he was going to take the award and put it in center stage in the CrowdStrike offices as a reminder of what went wrong, and uh, a reminder to not do this again. So, if anything, he could have went the other way and not turned up or kind of went radio silent about it all. So I have to give him some props for going along to one of the most renowned hacker conferences and accepting the award and basically owning up to it. So props for that part of it.
Yeah.
It sounds like they had a bit of a sense of humour for that
I
part.
think
I
there's an
suppose
element of that.
yeah, but they didn't have a sense of humour when it came to the trademark infringement notice they sent to ClownStrike,
I
which was
saw that too.
it
I
was a
saw that.
website that was
So
clownstrike.lol that was created
yes,
off the back of the CrowdStrike debacle, I suppose, is the best words for it. So so the sense of humour obviously faded when they seen that. I don't know what's going on with that now. I don't know if that's continuing. Actually, I wonder if that
Site's still up, so
site's still up. Okay.
aye.
So we'll have the link to that in the notes. It is a thing we shouldn't forget. Whether it's you go to ClownStrike and you think it's funny or not, we shouldn't forget this. There should be a lot of lessons learned, not just for CrowdStrike, but I think for IT globally, and
Agreed.
what can actually happen here.
Yeah.
So that this does it, because I've written down here, flights were cancelled, Stevie, as you mentioned. Banking was affected. ATMs, people couldn't take money out. I mean, that again, you can't take some money out. Yeah, but that money could have been critical. Maybe they were buying medicine. They were, you could go to
Oh
extreme
yeah.
lengths and talk about the bad
Yeah.
parts. Payment systems were affected. TV
Yeah.
channels went offline. Pharmacies, you can't get medication because they can't look up to see whether you're allowed that medication or not. That kind of thing. Hospitals were affected. Uh, Surgeries and operations were cancelled because systems weren't working. So again, it's not just some systems went down and they blue screened. It's what the systems actually do. Some of these systems are life critical, and
Yeah.
maybe they shouldn't be automatically accepting updates from
Oh, agreed. I agree. I think
Oh,
that has
big
to
time
be the
agree.
lesson. This has to be the takeaway from all of this. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
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 So hopefully it's a wake up call for governments and other institutions that, again, global sprawl, do this tiered rollout of patches, roll out definitions, rollout of updates, whatever you want to call it, and looking at your critical systems and making sure that you know when they're updated and not updating them, just ad hoc when these updates are pushed out. But ultimately, it was a failure of CrowdStrike to adequately test their products, which is one of the reasons why apparently they're pursuing a deal to buy patch management specialist Action One. So they're in talks to acquire it for $1 billion. And that was a memo sent to Action One employees. CrowdStrike themselves haven't commented on it. They're a Houston-based patch management and vulnerability specialist. So if they manage to go through with that, hopefully they can bring some of that technology in, some of that expertise in, and help avoid these problems again in the future. But again, just reiterating, hopefully we all learn some lessons from that, and going forward, whether it's CrowdStrike products or other types of products that we rely on.
Yeah.
We're coming quite close to the end of the stream today. I want to just a couple of honourable mentions before we finish up. Excuse me. Microsoft found some OpenVPN bugs, and you can chain them together to get remote code execution. But I believe it's only on the Windows platform. But please check that out. Again, the link to that will be in the description where you find this. And Microsoft patched 102 vulnerabilities at Patch Tuesday. That's incredible. 9 critical, 6 of which were actively being exploited, and the other 3 of that 9 are 0 days. So yeah, make sure you're patching all your things. Adobe has also issued 11 security advisories addressing 72 vulnerabilities. Again, remote code execution I think is in there as well. Software is so complex these days that even something that um, you know, touch up the photos of the kids can actually own your computer. So maybe that's me being a little naive, but it does seem, again, incredible to me. Okay, so we're bang on time. So I want to thank Gary and Stevie. Thank you for coming along today. Thank you for going through all of that stuff with us today. And I want to thank all of you watching today. This is our first season of our Unpacking Software live stream where the 3 of us, usually it's myself, Gary, and Stevie that talk about all of this, but sometimes we have other members of the Chocolatey team on as well. So please let us know what you think about it. On all the content that we produce, is it what you want to see or what you want to hear if you're on the podcast? Is it the right format? Is it the right length? Do you have any ideas of what we'd like to see or hear? Have your say at on our survey, and I'll pop that on the screen. But again, if you're on podcast, you can't see the screen, so it's at ch0.co/stream survey. That stream survey is all one word. To ensure you're notified of all of the great content that we produce here at Chocolatey Software, ensure you join our community hub on Discord, subscribe to us on YouTube, or follow us on X, or Twitter, or X, should I say, Mastodon, LinkedIn, Facebook, Blue Sky, and Twitch. You can find all the links on our homepage, chocolatey.org. Scroll all the way to the bottom, and you'll find the links down there. Our next live stream on Twitch and YouTube is on Thursday the 5th of September, where we'll be going, we'll be looking at Chocolatey Central Management. We're actually doing a release of Chocolatey Central Management soon, and you can have a kind of sneak peek at that before it actually goes out. So if you want to know what's coming up in that release, that's a live stream for you. Please join us then. So we hope to see you there. The same back time, the same back channel. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Yep.